David and Jason Benham, you probably know them from their HGTV series, or from the fact that they kind of are victims of cancel culture, but they refused to accept that, and they have moved on to some bigger and better things and are doing great stuff. And I'm really excited to have them on the Arms Room today. This is David in black and Jason in green, and they're actually in the same spot. I know it looks like that the screen is split, but yeah, they're in the same place in Charlottesville, Charlotte, North Carolina. So thanks for coming and speaking to us today. Give us what you got.
Awesome. Well, yeah, I'm David. We are identical twins. We're 45. He's been living in my shadow for 45 years because I'm the firstborn. Anyway, and we're married I married Lori, Lori, and he married Tori.
You can say it.
It's ridiculous. We did not.
Cheesy for me to say it.
We did not try to. Tori, Tori, which is crazy. We live on the same street. I've got 5 kids. He only has 4. So we got
to win that battle. I don't mind.
We got out of pro baseball in I got drafted out of Liberty in 98 by the Red Sox. She got drafted by the Orioles in 98. We went and played several seasons in the minor leagues, ended up finishing with the Cardinals. That's a whole nother story. But when we got out of baseball, we relocated our families to Charlotte, North Carolina in 2002. And Jason and I didn't know what we were going to do. So we started a business. And this was a real estate company. It was our first business. And our dad, back in Dallas, Texas, where we grew up, he wasn't an entrepreneur. He was a pastor. And so Jason and I understood the principles of the Bible, but we didn't understand like the principles of business, necessarily business, although a biblical principle we found out translate beautifully into the marketplace because God created the marketplace and he created us as well. And so we started a real estate company. It grew to 100 offices across 35 states. We started to buy and build and grow other companies. And then as a result of that, in 2012, TLC came to us and made us an offer on a reality show. And we thought, okay, we'll sign with TLC. But then in the middle of all of that, HGTV came in. They had just signed Chip and Joanna Gaines, the Fixer Upper family, wonderful family. They had just signed them. And they said, hey, we want to sign you and your brother. And we're going to have the Gaineses and the Benhams, and we're going to raise you guys to the top of the network. And that was really exciting. So we started filming. They knew that we were pro-life. They knew that we were pro-marriage because a year prior, Jason and I, from a business context, saw a lot of the big tech and a lot of the big businesses coming out for all of their political views. But we didn't see a lot of believers outside of Chick-fil-A or Hobby Lobby that were standing up. And so Jason and I were like, hey, look, number one, God defines marriage. God defines life. He defines civil society. We don't run away from his design. And then, of course, some of the publications said that we were right-wing bigots. Okay, fast forward now a year later, we get this offer from HGTV and they said, yeah, we've seen the news, but we don't believe like that. And a lot of people at HGTV and your agents and your production company believe like you guys do. We just don't talk about it. So that was kind of like we were in the belly of the whale. Well, fast forward now, 2014, commercials are running. Our show is just about to air. And that's when the Thought Mafia circled the wagons around Jason and I and our families. And they were like, you're haters, you're bigots, you're all this other stuff. And then they targeted HGTV. And unfortunately, they called us. The general manager was crying on the phone and was like, I can't believe they're doing this to you guys. But they fired us. And so Jason and I, that became a book, whatever the cost. It became a bestseller. We traveled the country. But, everybody knows why we got fired, right? Because we were cancel culture before it became a hashtag. They know why we got fired. We got bullied for our Christian faith or our conservative political views. But not a lot of people know why we got hired in the first place. We got hired and offered this major reality show simply because we put our principles, the principles of the Bible that we learned as young kids, into the marketplace. And I want to give you 2 of those.
Well, let me
just take away.
Let me say this real quick. What we learned from that experience 7 years ago, it's 7 years ago in May that we got fired by HGTV. What we learned from that, one of the main principles is faithfulness in your work leads to promotion. That's Proverbs 22:26, I think, or 29, that says, do you see a man skilled in his work? He'll stand before kings. He'll not stand before obscure men. So if you're faithful in your work, your level of clientele continually increases. But the flip side of that is true as well. And when you understand scripture, you'll know that the Bible always has balancing truths. The flip side of that is true as well. Faithfulness in your walk leads to persecution. So there's another verse in the book of Mark that says, hey, for your faith, you're going to stand before kings. You're going to be persecuted by people and drugged before kings. And so it's interesting that faithfulness in your faithfulness in your work leads to promotion, but faithfulness in your walk leads to persecution. The key is to not go for promotion or persecution. The key is to just be faithful.
That's right.
And faithful is being full of faith in the work that you do. And that's how you honor the Sabbath. That's how your work becomes worship. And so when you do those things, you'll find yourself doing really good work, but then sometimes those same principles are going to get you in trouble.
Yeah, but we can't control the results. We can't control if cancel culture is going to target us or not. What we can control is the way that we work. What we can control is speaking the truth in love. These are things that we can control. And if we go down, we go down. If you lose a reality show, big deal. I mean, we would have liked to have kept it, but big deal. I mean, the real persecution is happening overseas. People are losing their heads. They're losing their lives. But that kind of stuff will come to America if we don't stand strong in the marketplace right now against this bully agenda. Well, there are two principles that Jason and there are 5 principles we built on, but for the sake of time, I'm only going to give you 2. And we outlaw a lot of this stuff at Expert Ownership, which is a current digital company that Jason and I have built to equip entrepreneurs for this moment, to equip business leaders, to equip people in the marketplace for this moment in America's history, for this moment in culture. Because what we're seeing is that a lot of people are afraid. I get it. We've been afraid too. I know the feeling. And one of the ways to combat cancel culture, one of the ways to combat all the political division, one of the ways to combat a lot of this stuff is to be excellent in the marketplace. We've got a company overseas right now in Southeast Asia. It has 1,500 employees. We have multiple companies. So Jason and I have kind of been into business and done a lot of business, and we failed a lot too. Why don't you tell them about that company we started called Silly Bands? It was the dumbest thing we ever did.
We didn't start a company called Silly Bands.
It was a complete flop, but whatever. So we failed a lot, and we've had a few successes. And so 2 particular principles. Number 1 is very simple, and it's right out of scripture. Always be faithful in the little things. I mean, that's little things, everything of your business. That's the way you watch your money, the way that you handle your systems, the way that you lead your teams, whether that's an employee W-2 or whether it's a fractured business model. If you got 1099 contractors, even your vendors and other contractors that you work with, customers and clients, you always want to be faithful in the little things, because when you're faithful in little, God promises he'll make you faithful in much. And I learned this right out of pro baseball. I was in Major League spring training with the St. Louis Cardinals. And as a result of, I was married, I had 2 kids. I didn't get automatically placed on the big league roster. They sent me back to AA, and I knew probably not going to continue playing baseball. I need to move on. The next thing you know, I left the Cardinals and I took a job as a janitor in Charlotte because I needed a job. Like, I mean, we came here and started a company, but we had no money. And so we had to do odd jobs, and he was doing an odd job. And I took a job as a janitor, and I'll never forget. I went from swinging a bat in front of thousands of people with my name on it, Louisville Slugger bats, the whole 9 yards in Major League spring training, to several months later, I was holding a broom in front of nobody. And I felt like a failure. I honestly felt like, man, I'm a loser. My life, I was 26. I had 2 kids. I was married, and I thought I was going to hit the game-winning home run in the bottom of the 9th of the World Series. That didn't happen. And now here I was pushing a broom, and I really felt like a failure until the Lord began to speak to my heart. And I'll never forget, I was mopping the floors one day, and I knew that the sports awards ceremony was about to take place at the school, and here all these parents were coming in, and they're all dressed up, and they got the kids, and they're getting all the awards, and I'm back in the back standing by the trash can with a big old key ring on my pocket, thinking, I topped these award ceremonies for so many years, and now here I am, I'm the dude in the back. And the Lord really spoke to my heart. Do you love me for who I am, or do you just love me for my blessings? Mm. And my dad, when we were kids, he would say, boys, if you love God for what he gives you, then you'll hate him for what he takes from you. I mean, that's a really good point, because now I didn't have professional sports. I didn't have a name. I didn't have a book. I didn't have popularity. I didn't have anything. I had a measly paycheck, living in a borrowed apartment, just trying to keep my family afloat. And I said, God, I feel like a failure. And the Lord just really spoke to my heart and says, you are not a failure when you're faithful. Now you be as faithful pushing that broom as you did swinging that bat. And man, that just took all the pressure off of me. And I asked God to forgive me of just my mindset of finding my identity in what I did as opposed to who I was in Christ. Because you're a human being, not a human doing. Well, fast forward, that principle, when Jason and I several years later started our real estate company, that principle became a foundational bedrock principle. We will always be faithful in the little things, in the littlest of tasks. And then the second principle is to produce more in value than you take in pay. And that's just one simple bedrock principle. And we also learned that the hard way, but it was we look back, it was kind of fun. Jason and I, we had started our real estate company. I had left being a janitor.
Why don't you let me tell them?
Because you can't
they're
tell
already,
stories.
hey, listen, I mean, if we had several thousand people on this Facebook already, then they're probably already dropped down to a few dozen by now.
Whatever. Okay,
they're like,
go
well,
ahead.
can the guy in the green please talk?
Yeah, Jason clearly needs to be validated. Go ahead.
I don't need to be validated, but I need to be heard. No, so David and I give more value than you take in pay. I remember when I first read the book, The Go-Giver, which is a book I suggest a lot of you read. They kind of outlined a concept that sounded just like this, like where you give more value than you take in pay. But Jesus Christ is the first one that came up with that. He said, if somebody tells you to go 1 mile, then go 2 miles with them. And that was a tough thing back in that day. And so David and I learned this. We had just started our company in 2003. We hardly had any money at all. And so we were trying to sell real estate because that's what our business was. At the same time, we had to, it's a commission only business. So we had to earn money. And so we were telling all of our friends, hey, we'll take any odd jobs that you can give us. One of the guys knew somebody that owned a printing company, and he said they had a day's worth of work for us and they could pay $8 an hour. David and I were like, we'll take it. We'll go. And so we showed up that day to the printing company, and this is in February of 03. And actually it's January of 03. And the manager comes out and he says, okay, guys, hey, thanks for showing up. We've got these massive pallets of paper. And he walked us to the back warehouse area. And there's these 3 massive pallets of paper that he said they were supposed to have been stacked 1, 2, 3, but they were all stacked individually. And so what he needed for me and David to do was simply pull off one sheet from each stack them together, and put them on new pallets.
It was brainless work.
Right. And he said, I don't have full-time work for you guys. I wish I did, but I've only got this. This is going to take you 8 hours to do. And so we said, okay. So with our newfound boss gone, he took off, and David and I in 4 hours were able to get done what he said would take 8 hours. Well, in that moment, we had a decision to make. Do we sit back and collect 8 hours of pay for only 4 hours of work? Or do we give more value than we take in pay? And so we looked around that warehouse, and in the back corner, it was disheveled. It was just boxes everywhere. It looked like the trash hadn't been taken out in a long time. So David and I were like, all right, let's just go clean all that up. So we went and completely organized and cleaned up the back side of his entire warehouse. The manager comes walking back in at the end of the day, and he sees our stacks of paper, says, good job. Then he looks over at the back of the warehouse and he says, who in the heck cleaned that back there? And we said, well, we did. We had some extra time, so we did it. He said, oh my gosh, that's amazing. I want to hire you both full-time. You see, before he left, he said he didn't have full-time work for us. But then when he came back, because we had given more in value than we took in pay, now all of a sudden doors that were once closed miraculously opened up. Of course, we didn't take that job. We went out there and continued to build our business. But it was a principle that we learned to give more value than you take in pay. And that's something that we wrapped into the digital course that we created called Expert Ownership. And that's really what we're jazzed up about lately. David and I have started dozens of businesses, but what God has really called us to now is maybe don't start any more businesses, help other people start and grow and scale their businesses. So expertownership.com. David and I just finished the book last week. It'll be released in the next few months, but our course is already out. And we talk specifically about systems, team building, teamwork, leadership, and money. And we give you the exact model that we took to build our office from one location in North Carolina to 100 offices in 35 different states. And then how we took the money that came from that, the active income from our work, and we turned it into passive income from investments so that we could retire by the age of 33. Now, we don't believe in retirement. We believe in re-tirement, but like put on new tires and keep on moving. So that's what we've done. And this is kind of how we're living out our retirement, and is helping other entrepreneurs first recognize that your work is sacred. Like God looks down on that and smiles at it. And we like to say as believers, our work is worship. But God would also say that he wants you to be excellent at what you do. He created you in his image. And when you are creative in your work, you can do amazing things that makes God look good, and it gets you that promotion. Whether that's promotion by the level of clients, if you own your own business, or if you're just somebody working as an employee, you'll get promoted by your boss. And then one day, maybe you can own your own business. And so that's what expert ownership is all about. That's what we're into. And that's why we're excited to be on your podcast today.
Well, it sounds like you're taking your retirement and using it to make babies with 9 kids between the two of you. But that's definitely a noble pursuit by itself. One thing I wanted to ask you about specifically, because this is an interest of mine, is your concept of taking missionaries and helping them go from being basically wards of churches in the United States, where they have to spend a lot of time raising money so that they can go out on the mission field, and helping them use the power of digital income and locationless income to actually become profitable in their own right where they are. Because I've kind of seen that work out a lot as living in Panama. I think, of course, everybody's a missionary. We didn't move down there to be missionaries per se, but I think that one of the things that I've noticed down there is that we've been able to really kind of act as missionaries in our hometown in Panama, specifically because we're not there as missionaries. We've been able to reach people because we're just there doing life with them. And what they need to see is a wife that's faithful to her husband, and a husband that's faithful to his wife, and children that obey their parents, and a functional family that like they've never seen before, that follows the principles of God in life, in business, and is not there selling Jesus, so to speak, but is there living like Jesus as best we can and giving that example to people. And I think it really touches people in a different way. Tell me about how you guys have helped people, missionaries specifically, develop in the place where they land.
Well, David and I discovered back in 2010 that there were 600 missionary families coming home every month off of the mission field for lack of Western funding. So David and I thought, wow, all these missionaries that rely on people to just give them money, and they rely on a donation model, it's hurting them now. And that's a good model. And obviously the Old Testament specifically talks about the Levites and those who are to make their vocation specifically about the souls of people. And we're all concerned with the souls of people, but there are vocational ministers and vocational missionaries that need that support. But what David and I saw was, as our businesses began to grow and our hearts were set on serving God with our work, we realized and discovered that our identities, we were already ministers right where we were. We were missionaries right here in Charlotte. And then as we expanded into other locations across the country, and then ultimately across the world, the first thing that we did to help missionaries was to realize, number one, that your work is your primary form of worship. And number two, we're all ministers together. So you can actually do things that make money and still be a missionary. Mm-hmm. So we started a business over there. We brought in 2 missionaries, and we started a business over in Davao City, Philippines, where essentially anything that you can do with a phone or a computer, we could do from over there. It's a business process outsourcing company. Virtual assistant, that kind of stuff. And but what we taught our people was, we would have missionaries come in and work with us, and we told them, listen, that work that you're doing is missions work. Mm-hmm. Like, it's not all about just physically using your mouth to say Jesus loves you and has a great plan for your life. It's delivering baby bottles across the border to make sure that a mom can feed her kids. Like, do good work like that. And this, yes, you will get paid for it. And then, at the break, maybe we can do Bible studies, that type of thing. But the idea is that you're already on mission that way. Well, when they started to discover that, the lid came off.
Yeah.
And now we've got a business over there that's thriving, and the president of the state over there is inviting we call them missioneers. That's the pioneer, going where no one's gone before, the engineer creating something, and we call it a self-sustaining revenue model for missions, and then having a missions heart. Our missioneers are getting invited to the president's holiday parties. One guy got featured on the news. He put on the front cover of a magazine. They even approached doing a reality show on our missioneers. And so we got so much good stuff going over because we're bringing real tangible value, and our people are getting paid to do that. And so, yeah, dude, there's still support that comes in for some of the projects that we do, but it's really redefining this whole missions mindset to where it can be self-sustainable through work, through bringing tangible value. And when you do that, people's hearts are open. You have no more influence over a human being than when you sign their paycheck. So start a business.
Yeah. And the root word minister means to serve. So unfortunately, we have a paradigm, and Jason and I, we talk a lot about mindset, because I think, methods are always second after mindsets. We got to get our mindset right. But we have this paradigm in the church, especially, that where you're placed and how you're paid defines and determines the ministry. So if you're placed in a church or behind a pulpit and you're paid by the tithe money, then you're in ministry. Or if you're placed in some nonprofit organization and paid by donations, you're in ministry. But then if you're placed in the boardroom and paid by profit, you're not in ministry anymore. Now, we're all in ministry, right? Jesus warns us, don't be loving money. That's the source of all kinds of evil, the love of money. And I didn't say money, but the love of money. Even the Apostle Paul in the New Testament encouraged young believers, work with your hands. Don't be a burden to anybody. That's the beauty of making income, is that not only are you not a burden to people, but you can be a blessing to people. And unfortunately, we have a lot of burden, even when we just look at our political system and just the obesity of the welfare state, it's like, we're not helping these people out. We're burdening our country, and it's hurting the people. But when we get people working to bless the country and to bless the church and bless their communities and bless their families, and specifically with the overseas missions emphasis, because I say a missions emphasis. He just sneezed, by the way.
Oh,
I didn't want to sneeze on camera.
Hey, but with over here, all of us have a missions emphasis, in terms of we want our business to have impact. So the key is that we have to have a mindset. Where I'm placed and how I'm paid does not define ministry. It's the Jesus that's in me, and no matter where I'm placed and how I'm paid, I can be a minister.
Man, that is fantastic. Thank you so much for bringing those messages to our guys today. I'd love to have you back on again. We're out of time today, but man, really excellent stuff. And I appreciate what you're doing. You also started a couple of gyms, so we have that in common. I started a gym down in Panama, and it was really more of a boy, I had no idea how challenging it would be just to have a gym. I mean, I thought that would be about the easiest business. You throw some equipment in there and then open the doors, but a really challenging business to keep going. But it is also a ministry, and I love how you bring those two together. So thank you for your example, and thank you for your willingness to be teachers and facilitators for people across the globe. Again, we'd love to have you on some other time.
Absolutely. Thanks, man. You got it.